Let's see here how to write a perfect narrative. What techniques we can use, what techniques we should follow to produce the perfect story. Most of us, when we hear the word story, we understand a longer story, which can be as a novel or a novella, which is not correct, by the way. Story can start from even 100 words till thousands of words. Okay, so the length of a story depends on your purpose. If you're writing a short story or if you're writing a longer one. Okay. So now we're going to write a short story. What short story is? Any narrative, any type of narration that we can write depending on our experience. So I recommend you when the exam asks you to write a narrative, be away from like crime stories. Crime stories. Don't write about space exploration. Trip. Okay. So better to write about something you already experienced or you can experience. Okay. So choose any story that can be believable. Any story that can be what? Believable. Don't write something like aliens, for instance. I don't recommend you to write this type of stories. Even in exams, especially English as a first language or checkpoint English asks you to write about a story, something that you experienced already, like a day at the beach, a ceremony you attended, a difficult experience you had. So something that can be or could happen to you in your real life or your daily routine. Fine, let's start our story here. First of all, you should prepare your plan before you start writing. If anybody has any question, guys, just hit the chat box and send number 1 or that you have a question. Okay? I mean, what your story is going to be about. Look here at these elements. Number 1, you should decide exactly where your story will happen. Old house or empty building or amusement park. So select the place in which your story is going to have the setting of your story. So the setting of the story means what? Means where your story is going to happen. Where and when does the story takes place? It's very necessary to determine where your story is going to happen and when your story is going to happen. It's very necessary. You will know later why the setting of the story is very necessary. Oh, yes, yeah. Who is that? I don't know what is the name. Yes, about the story. But I prefer not to write about science fiction or even a horror story. But finally, you can choose any story you'd like, horror genre or fantasy or whatever the type of story you prefer. It's up to you. Okay. Then again, characters. Characters is very necessary. Decide who are your character. Is he an old man, a vampire, or even a little girl? So decide who are your characters in the story. Characters can be either human, normal people, Mustafa, Ahmed, Ali, Ibrahim, okay, or even they can animals. So it's up to you also to decide what type of characters you can write. All stories in the English literature use human characters, except some type of stories that we name as fable. The fable is a type of stories that depend on animals. One example of fables is some stories you read when you were a kid. The tortoise and the rabbit. And one developed fable is, I recommend you to read this story, guys. It's very informative. Animal Farm. This story is written by George Orwell. I recommend you. By the way, it's a movie on YouTube. Also, you can watch it in on YouTube, or you can read the adapted version of this story. Let's go back to the lesson. So again, decide where the story is going to happen, which is the setting. Decide who are your characters. Decide again what is your main idea in the story, what you're going to write about. Will you write about somebody who has got lost? So the story here is going to be adventure story, or you will write about discovering a family secret. So this is a mystery story. Is going to be falling in love with a vampire. So the story is a horror story. It's up to you to decide what genre you prefer to write. I mean by genre here is type of story, okay? Finally, which is one of the vital core points in the story writing, is why you write. What is your problem in the story? Why is there a problem and how can it be solved? Okay, so again, what should I focus on in my plan? Number one, your characters. And number two, the setting, which is the place where the story could happen, in a cave or in the desert, at school, at home, where your story is going to happen, and why you write, which we name it as the problem in the story. Until now, any question about this part?
No.
No, Mister.
Okay, so as I
No,
told
sir.
you, yes. Any question? Or should we go on?
No, sir. No good.
Okay, go on. Next.
Mister, so that's the plan of what writing the narrative.
Yes, but you would see now some advanced plan. This is first some top tips to pursue why you write, the purpose of your writing, and where your story happened, what are your characters. But in the next slide, we're going to check here some advanced plan for your story. This is what you should decide before you start writing. Okay? Anybody of you knows what is this diagram on the screen?
That's amount.
What you know about this diagram? Anybody of you did see this diagram before?
Yes, me.
Yes, what it was?
It's the introduction, then the rising action, and then the climax, and then resolution, and then conclusion.
You know what we name it? The concept. Anybody of you knows? Anybody knows what is the structure? We name it as the plot of the story. The plot of the story. The plot of a story means the sequence of the events. The sequence of what? Of the events. What we mean by sequence of events, we mean order of events, the logical order of events from the beginning till the end. We know any story should include begin, middle, and end. Okay? This structure from beginning to end is named as the plot of the story. And when you write a story, you should follow this 5 stages plot structure. Number one is the introduction of the story, the opening scene of your story. Look at this structure. Let's read it together and identify how the events here are in logical order. Number one, he said here, Cinderella lives unhappy unhappily with her stepmother and stepsister. This is the beginning. So the story opened following this introduction, which Cinderella lives unhappily. Okay, then your events should logically develop. Okay, so start to develop your events step by step following logical order, which we name as rising actions. Rising what? Actions. Rising actions means that the event start to what? Rise up, which means develop. Logically, in a story won't stay in the same moment. It should develop, right? So look here at these four developing actions, which we name as rising action. Here, the stepsisters prepare for and go for the ball. Ball here means concert or a party. Then what happened later? A fairy godmother appears and provides Cinderella with all she needs to go to the ball. Excuse me, he's using his mic. Please, Rose, mute your mic, please. Thank you. Again, still the rising action, going up, the events going up. Cinderella goes to the ball and dance with the prince. Until now, there is no problem because it's the regular or the logical developments of the events. One point that should put in consideration, which is the top of the events, this what we name as climax. We name it as climax, which means at this point, the events will go to the solution. We agreed that our story should include what? A problem. And this problem should reach its peak, should reach a moment which we name as the climax. At this moment, the event starts to be solved. Let's define what climax is for people who don't know. The climax means the turning points of the events, the turning points. Okay? After this climax, after the turning points, your events should fall down, which means here is the beginning of the solution. The beginning of the solution. And the conclusion here is, which means the ending of your story. So very simply, your story should follow 5 stages structure. Number 1, introduction. Let's say introduction. You can ignore the complex structure in the middle, but follow the structure. Beginning, middle, and end. Simply, introduction, the beginning, the opening scene of the story. Rising actions means the events began to develop, the problem began to appear until it reached its peak or its top of events, the turning point, which we name it as the climax. Finally, going down to the solution. Okay, any question about this 5 structure? Now, when you the structure of a story, now when you how to begin, events begin to develop, reaching the climax, and going down to the solution of the problem. Is it clear?
Yes, Mister.
If you have any question, as I told you, just hit the chat box. Let's go further. Okay, success checklist. What I meant here by success checklist, it means the rules you should follow in your story to produce or conduct the perfect story. Number 1, use strong verbs and adjectives and also adverbs. Number 2, use Dialogue. We'll explain each point, by the way, here. Use dialogue. Number 3, use figurative language. Number 4, use strong descriptive language. Number 5, show and don't tell. Then, logical order of the events, clear beginning, clear conflicts, and clear ending. Yes, ya Ammar, your question is how long? Ammar, yes, you can use your mic, I hope.
Yes, Mr. How much is the average rising actions that are going to be used in a story?
You mean the length of lines you write?
Yes. No. Like how many paragraphs of
No,
rising...
the total length of the story, ya Ammar, is about 300 to 350 words, okay? So
Okay.
the length of your paragraphs depends on your organization of the story. In total, 5 to 6 paragraphs.
Okay, Mr. Thank you.
It's not a novel. It's not a long story. Okay. Okay. So again, the success checklist is very necessary. I hope that you capture the screen. Okay. I told him that the length is ranges from 250 to 350 words. Okay. And for schools, it depends on each school which criteria it follows. Strong verbs, dialogues, figurative language, strong descriptive language, show and don't tell, logical order of events, clear beginning, clear conflict, and clear ending. Let's check if you know these concepts. Ali, can you use your mic, please? Okay. Number 1, Yari, you know what dialogue, right?
Sorry?
Dialogue.
Dialogue.
Yes, what dialogue is?
I'm not familiar with dialogue. No.
Sorry?
I'm not really familiar with it. I haven't heard it in a long time.
Okay. Anybody can answer what dialogue is?
Yeah,
Yes?
It is a conversation between two people.
Yes, perfect. The conversation between the characters. Okay, what else? What is figurative language? You know what we mean by figurative language? Anybody?
Yes, Mr. I do.
Yes.
The figurative language is like the metaphor, the simile, or the hyperbole.
Yes, good job. Some other
Mr. Can I
expressions?
say
Yes,
another?
yes, sure.
It's figurative language means it's a way of expressing something using words, tricks, or realistic meaning.
It's unrealistic, ya Malik, not realistic. Figurative language.
Yeah, unrealistic.
Figurative language means unreal sort of language, like Ammar said, similes, metaphors, personifications, hyperboles, oxymoron, onomatopoeia, and other forms of figurative language that we will spot the light on later. Then strong descriptive language, show, don't tell. Somebody asked me what I mean by show and don't tell. Anybody can express himself what we mean here by show and don't tell.
Mr. Schumacher, it's a technique used to allow the reader to experience the story through words, thoughts, or scenes.
Yes, exactly, through words. So I understand what the writer intends to convey by using words, images, and thoughts. Good job. Thank you. Khalid,
Yes, mister.
can you explain more? Can you add what show and don't tell the reader? Show the reader, but don't tell him. what we mean here by show and don't tell.
Use some expressions and adjectives, but don't not use direct words to
Yes.
show what you want to show to the reader.
Exactly. Show and don't tell, guys, means implicit. Implicit language, implied, which we mean also by indirect. Okay? So it's not direct. Don't say somebody is sad. Don't say that somebody is angry, because this way is what? Is direct. How can I say this in an indirect way? By showing and not telling. Here, like to say he or his tears drifted through his cheeks. Okay, so now I just expressed his sadness using words by talking or describing the action, but not telling the action. By the way, we'll see some more examples about showing and not telling. As I told you, success checklist is very necessary for you. I hope most of you captured the screen to check if your writing is successful by following the right techniques. Yes, ya hala sir, can you explain from the second one till the end? What is the second one? Oh, the dialogue. Okay, we'll explain it in detail. Look here, because the 6 techniques are already explained. The last step for your success is the correct use of the SPAG. Spelling, correct punctuation, and grammar. Let's see here how I start my story. As I told you, number 1, somebody reads, please. Jassim, you can read?
Can I read, sir?
Okay, read.
One settings. What's settings? Setting. A setting is where a story takes place. It's important to set the scene
Scene.
at the scene
Yes.
at the opening paragraph when and where the story commences.
Okay, occurred. The story occurred. Occurred means happened. So it's very important to tell the reader where your story happened and when. So the setting, simply 2 words. When your story happened and where your story happened. In the setting, you can describe the weather because it's something environmental around the characters, the weather, the surroundings, what is around the character, and the people. You can describe as well the buildings around you, any facilities, all what is related to the place, or let's say the atmosphere. Okay, the atmosphere. This is the setting. So in the story, you should tell me where your story happened by describing the weather, describing the surroundings, describing the people, or let's say describing the character. Okay, next step. Somebody read, please. Characters. It's very necessary to write about your characters.
Can I?
Okay.
Okay. Characters. 2 or 3 characters are usually enough for a short story. Create your characters, the story circling around, and make them different than each other in different ways to make them appeal to the reader. Here is how to make the characters sound real.
Yes, go ahead. How the characters sound real. Number
Give them suitable names.
Yes.
For example, Pirates, Captain Big Leg, Scarface Bill, Sly
Sam.
One-Eyed
Pete. Okay, thank you. What he means here, guys, by in your story, don't write your friends' names. Okay? Don't write Ahmed, Muhammad, Hala, Samir, Ali, and so on, but write native names, like some English names. Okay? And better to make your characters expressive. What I mean by expressive is to give the name that have some features of the character. Somebody is angry, so you can say name him as Angry Jack, the Artful Dodger. Okay, so try to use real characters, not your friend names, not Arab names, I recommend. Okay, so now in the introduction of the story, the opening paragraph is going to describe what? Huh? In your introduction, what should we describe?
The setting and the characters.
Perfect. Setting and characters. Focus on these two elements. Setting and characters. We agreed. Setting, the weather, surrounding, and people. Characters are the people or even the animals. If you are writing a story, depends on animals. Okay? I hope this part is clear. Then describe what they look like and how they move. You can describe the characters in the story. It depends on the situation, not regular or not a random description. Look at this example and let's, Hassan Samir, please read.
Okay, sir. Describe what they look like and how they move. For example, a wizened old man stuffing about the house in the shuffling about the house in slippers. A giant hairy orange caterpillar creeping slowly along. A 10-year-old girl, rather small for her age, skipped merrily along the street, hair long for hair flying in the wind.
Thank you. If you looked at the short paragraph, you would find some great description for the man or the old man here. Somebody please tell me what or how the man is being described here. Abdullah Al-Hudi, please answer.
As wise. Wizened old man. Yes. Wizened old man.
Perfect.
So he is wise.
Yes, he's wizened.
And he's shuffling around the house in slippers.
Okay. Then what description again?
Can I try?
Yeah, yes, sure. What other things are being described here?
Orange caterpillar and creepy slowly lonely.
Yes,
alone.
Perfect. The caterpillar is also described in this scene. Also, another character appears here. A 10-year-old girl.
A 10-year-old.
Yes, rather small for her age, skipped merrily. How he described again the 10-year-old girl. Merrily means happily.
He described the way she's walking.
Yes, perfect.
And how she looks for her age.
Exactly, her reactions while walking. That she
and how her hair was.
What do you think of this part? Her long fair hair flying in the wind. Okay, so also here, what matters here or what focus on here is the description of the characters. Here in the short paragraph, we have 3 characters, the old man and the caterpillar and what? The 10-year-old girl. Great. So focus on the description of the character. You don't need to write too much. Just simple words, 2-3 words to show the examiner that you can describe. You are able to use the descriptive language. Okay, great. Begin our story. Number one, the dialogue. Please, from here, what's on fire? The beginning of the story. Now, this is the practical part of the lesson. I should start my story by what? By a dialogue. What dialogue? I am not should. I recommend it's one of the techniques by which you can use or you can start your story, which is the dialogue. Dialogue, as we agreed earlier, is conversation between the characters. Characters are talking. Okay? Yes, yeah, you can do. You can do. You can use any word that help the reader to understand very well your characters. So let's see what we mean here by the dialogue. Ammar, read please.
Sure. Dialogue. Sharks shouted, the ships look out, hundreds of them. They seem to be heading our way, cried the captain.
As you see here, two characters are talking together. Somebody said, shouted the ships, look out. He said, hundreds of them. Then he said, they seem to be heading our way, cried the captain. And we'll see what words exactly we can use instead of saying said. Because most of us always say, said my dad, said my mom, said the teacher. There are some various words to use rather than the word said. Go ahead, ya Ammar. Ammar, read the second example.
Sure. Hurry or you'll be late, called my mother from the bottom of the stairs. Today of all days, you want to be on time. If I had only known what that day would bring, I would have stayed in bed.
Thank you. Either here, two characters are talking.
Welcome.
Yeah, mom and her son. Mom and her son. The first character said, hurry or you'll be late. This is the mom. Then, today of all days, you want to be on time. Guys, for the dialogue, just a hint. Your dialogue should be punctuated correctly and put between these two inverted commas, which we name as speech mark. Okay, speech marks. So if you looked here at all original words said by the characters, you would find them placed between the two inverted commas that we named as speech marks. As well here, hurry in this part until the word late, as well here in the second line, the two speech marks. So when you use dialogue in the story, you should punctuate it correctly. Dialogue is necessary in stories because it makes your story sounds live, as if it is real. Okay? So the first technique, use your mics. The first technique to begin your story is using what?
Dialogue.
Dialogue.
Why dialogue is necessary?
To make it sound real.
Sorry?
To attract the reader's attention.
Okay, somebody said to make it sound real. Somebody said to make the reader attention. Okay, by the way, using the dialogue is one way to make your story suspenseful. We'll see also how to make the story suspenseful. This is technique number one. Technique number two, vivid description, which I think is also a perfect way to start. Vivid description means you use a strong description using descriptive language. Yasin, read this example. Look at this opening of the story. This is an opening scene of a story using the descriptive technique.
A vivid description. The sun was warm on my back as I raced towards the waiting yellow school bus. As I
Nestled.
nestled into the worn leather seat, I was greeted by the friendly voices of other excited children. The look on my face was one of confidence and content, contentment.
Yes, contentment.
With a jerk, the bus rumbled down the road, and I was on my way into one of the worst days of my life.
Thank you, Yasin. Somebody raised his hand, iPhone. I'm not sure about your name. Yes?
Excuse me, could I read another paragraph if there is?
I'm sorry? Excuse me, can you say again?
Excuse me, could I read another paragraph if there is?
You want to read another paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay, next one. But first of all, let's explain the description here. As you see, he's describing everything around him. The sun, its first description. So as I told you earlier, you can describe the weather, describe the surrounding. The sun was warm on my back as I raced toward the yellow school bus, as I nestled into the worn leather seat. This is another description for the seats in the bus. I was greeted by the friendly voices. This is the three description about the children. Excited children. This is the fourth description. The look on my face was one of confidence and contentment. With a jerk, the bus rumbled down, strong verb, rumbled down the road. And I was on my way into one of the worst days of my life. Okay, so you can start with a strong description like this one. The third technique, which is the last technique here, here is another description. Last technique is you can start the story with an action. With an action for people who likes horror stories or even adventure stories. Somebody reads the iPhone that asked to read.
Oh yeah, it's me.
Excuse me, what's your name?
My name is Jana.
Jana?
Jana, yes.
Oh, Jana, okay, good name. Start, Jana, read.